What's up, Captains? This episode is brought to you by Lambs, my favorite EMF blocking clothing company. And the only reason I'm not wearing their beanie right now is because it's currently getting washed because I wear it so freaking much. And not just when traveling, although that's fantastic because when you're inside of a metal tube 30,000 feet above the earth and everybody's trying to find a weak Wi-Fi signal, you're being bombarded by EMFs. So every time I fly, I wear their beanie, their shirt, and their underwear, even though I have to get patted down through security because it lights up the monitor. They think your whole body is made of metal. But I also wear it when sleeping. I pull it all the way over my head. So that way it doubles as protection for my $1 billion supercomputer, AKA my brain, from oxidative stress. But also it doubles as an eye mask because, as I hope you're aware, you don't want any external light when you're trying to sleep. That disrupts the quality of your sleep. So I wear it every single night while I sleep, all the way over my eyes. Works as a nice double whammy there. To get the hookup on anything from Lambs, go over to getlambs.com and use coupon code Captain Morgan. Not only will that save you some money, but it will also save you from oxidative stress. This episode is also brought to you by the Captain's Lifestyle Crew, because in this episode, Anthony and I are talking about masculinity, and it is so important for men to have a strong connection with other men. And that is exactly what the Captain's Lifestyle Crew is. It's my private online mastermind community for men only. We meet every single week, Sundays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We hop on a coaching and accountability call. We also host monthly masterminds where we discuss different high performance topics, often with guest speakers, usually from this podcast. And it's also a knowledge database. I update it frequently in different categories such as masculinity, mindset, sleep, nutrition, communication, you name it. It's constantly being updated. And it's your chance to network with other like-minded, high-achieving men. When you join the crew, you also get access, or you also get discounts on in-person events, which the first one will be happening. It is currently being planned for April. So stay tuned for that. The link to join the Captain's Lifestyle Crew will be in the show notes of this podcast. And like I said, we meet once a week. So if you're looking for accountability, if you're looking for a group of like-minded men to help push you to be a better man yourself, then the crew is for you. So click the link in the description, and happy to have you. Now, let's get into today's episode with Anthony Miranda. Hello, and welcome aboard another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. This is your captain speaking, Taylor Morgan. On today's episode, we have another repeat guest. His name is Anthony Miranda. Anthony and I served together in the United States Marine Corps. He is a former podcast guest, and I wanted to have him back on because he has recently started up his own kind of health, wellness, and masculine optimization program. Not program, but podcast himself, called the Karma Conscious Podcast. And I wanted to have him on today to talk about all things masculinity, because I think there's a very big disconnect on what masculinity is, and this whole craze about toxic masculinity and the balance between masculine and feminine energy. So with all that said, Miranda, welcome back for round two.
Yeah, appreciate it, brother. I'm excited to dive in, man. This is it's a burning concept I love talking about. So I'm excited to really dive in. I think a lot of people are going to find value in what we talk about today. So
100%. And yeah, I'm very excited about this topic too. We go back and forth on the Instagram DMs pretty frequently with some deep questions. Mm-hmm. Not like the typical sending memes back and forth, but like the meaning of love and all these type of things. So before we get into all that stuff, let's talk to me about what made you want to create Karma Conscious. Like, what was the idea behind that?
Yeah, great question. So karma for me is it's been a theme in my life for a while. Of course, it started in the Marine Corps, right? Bad karma is our section's call sign. It moved on to the financial services sector, When I got out, I started selling insurance, started my own business. I named it Money is Karma, because I realized how you treat your money now determines how I treat you later. And just sitting and thinking about life, I realized that, man, karma is so crucial. And karma is essentially the sum of all your choices manifested into the current moment. So I'm thinking, okay, if that's what karma is, and if we make better choices, we create a better life. So if we can get people more conscious of that fact, then they too can create a better life for themselves. And then in turn, teach others how to make a better life for themselves. So that was really at the root of it. And it's exciting, man, because I think getting people to be, I know there's a lot of people out there who are, and you obviously understand this, there's a lot of people looking for answers. There's a lot of people looking for help. There's a lot of people looking for guidance. And sometimes we, like myself, I didn't grow up in the best environment. You know, I grew up in a very toxic home, a very tumultuous situation from the city of Chicago. So I didn't have those resources. I didn't have those answers. I had to go seek out myself through coaching, mentorship, seminars, books, podcasts. So if I can be a facilitator for that information and help guide someone else into their healing, hey, man, I don't see a more fulfilled life than that.
Absolutely. I agree. That's literally pretty similar to why I do what I do now and why I created the Captain's Lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say congratulations on actually following through what you said you were going to do. Because remember we hopped on like a podcast kind of consultation call, because I had already been running my podcast for about a year and a half at the time. And we hopped on a call with your partner to talk about some of the best strategies to get it going. Yep. And I had hopped on a few of those before in the past, and I never really heard anything back from any of them. And it's like, you actually followed through on all this stuff, and now Karma Conscious is up and running, and you guys got 3 episodes.
Yeah, we got 2. We're dropping the 3rd on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But, dude, you're absolutely right. And just looking at some numbers, I realized that 95% of podcasts don't make it past the 3rd episode.
People don't understand how much goes into it. They just think it's going to be this fun, easy thing.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, I remember getting off our call. Me and Logan were looking at each other like, oh shit, this is
so I told you guys straight up.
Simple. Yeah.
Yeah. I told you straight up, like, if you're going to do this, you got to want to do it. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just some side project.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
So what were the statistics? 95% don't make it past the 1st episode.
95% of podcasts don't make it past the 3rd episode.
Oh, 3rd episode.
Of that, 95% don't make it past the 20th episode. So I'm like, wait, so you're telling me all I need to do is just follow through for 4 episodes, I'm top 10%. It's that easy. Yep. It's that easy. It's that, and this kind of is a perfect point that aligns with our conversation today about masculinity, is that the bar is set so low today that it's so goddamn easy to be exceptional. All you have to do is stay committed at least a little bit, just a little bit.
At least to start.
Yeah. It's not that it's.
Yeah. I think difficult. Consistency is one of the most important aspects of success, whatever you want to define success as. Success in your new diet, success in whatever your goals are in the gym, success in your relationship, consistency in these things. So a lot of people, this new supplement comes out and it's like, this pill will make you lose 15 pounds of fat in 30 days, or this new 7-day challenge. And they're just hopping from thing to thing, never staying consistent. It's like, if you just incorporate this small percentage of high performance habits, that's why I created the 4-3-2-1-30 method nightly ritual and the cages morning ritual. Because I believe if you have strong bookends to your day and you do them consistently, it really doesn't matter all that much, all the stuff that happens in between. Now, yes, we can start to optimize that. But if you got a solid morning and a solid evening ritual, and you do that consistently, you're better than 95% of the population. Just do that consistently over and over again. Yeah. Stick with it. So another thing you said really spoke to me. You said people are looking for answers. And I've noticed this as well, because I've been coaching for the past 7 years, but it's only up until very recently, I would say within the past 2 months, that I've noticed more people starting to come to me looking for answers specifically relating to masculinity and how they can awaken their masculine energy. Because I think as a society, it's been so far suppressed and almost viewed as a negative thing. And that's obviously not good. And now we're starting to see the effects of that. And also, this is kind of woo-woo out there, but I just want to hear your take on this. I think I maybe heard this from Aubrey Marcus first, or I read it on some masculine energy blog, but I believe that there's collectively, we're starting in the process of this larger awakening, because so many individuals, at least from my perspective now, are starting to become aware that they're lacking in masculinity, myself included. And we're kind of collectively coming to this realization. And then I believe that this is just the beginning. And so I believe 2022 is going to be a fucking amazing year because people are coming to this realization. That's why I named the new part of my program Masculine Entrepreneurial Optimization. Because I believe people are starting to realize this and they need the answers to understand how to awaken that.
Right.
Do you agree with that? Do you feel that it's kind of this collective awakening, that it's some bigger picture?
I agree 100%. I think what this reminds me of is the hard times create strong men cycle.
This is it.
For all the viewers and listeners, it's hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and then weak men create hard times. And it goes through that cycle over and over again. And when you look at history, you look at society, that cycle is prominent in every civilization. And it's, if you read into any Stefan Arnio's work, he says it's an 80-year cycle. So if that's true, then that would mean that 2020 marked the beginning of hard times creating strong men. So as you can see, we're in societal decay today. There's a lot of issues. And I think I see it as well, is that a lot of men are waking up to these issues and they're finally saying, we need to change. We need to fix something. There's something that needs to be done. And I believe that it starts with me. And it's a beautiful thing because, and honestly, it's seeing more men be devoted to masculinity, seeing more men be devoted to themselves, their family, their business, their church, whatever it is they decide to be devoted to, actually taking action in their life, seeing that is such a beautiful thing because it gives me hope. It aligns my vision with my faith, and it makes me realize that we're headed in a better direction. These dark days they're over. They're going to be over. And it's a beautiful thing, man. It's a really beautiful thing. So I love what you're doing because, hey, you're part of the process. You're part of that growth,
Yeah. And I wasn't always. So this wasn't until, like I said, very recently, the past 2 months, when I've really started to dive into masculinity. I've had former clients come back to me with this issue of wanting to awaken their masculinity. Clients who have went through the full program, because I didn't teach that. Now I taught, some mindset and, leadership things, but not a lot about masculinity, in general. And so now I'm excited for this new version of the program. It's going to be so much better once we understand the balance between masculine and feminine energy. I believe as a business owner, you need to be driven by impact. So a lot of business owners are driven by money, produce whatever, make whatever, as long as they're making money. I think that's bullshit. That's going to be a thing of the past here pretty soon. You need to be driven by impact. You need to be led by the divine masculine. So all of the qualities of the divine masculine, the CEO energy, assertive, goal-oriented, action taker, all those things. You also need to be influenced by the divine feminine. So you can't just be an assertive asshole and just push through and, steamroll everybody, just my way or the highway. You got to listen to your employees, to your customers. You got to have empathy, compassion, caring, kindness, all those things. That is what I believe to be the basics of a successful business, led by impact or driven by impact, led by the divine masculine and influenced by the divine feminine. What do you think about that?
I agree. I think I absolutely agree. It's so when I think of the masculine and feminine dynamic, right? I think of harmony. I think of two, I wouldn't necessarily say opposing forces because that almost sounds negative. I think of two full forces like dancing together.
Yin yang.
Right. And exactly. Yin and yang. Yep.
Perfect.
And I think traditionally what it'd be great to see is that men are typically governed by their masculinity. And as you said, influenced by some feminine traits as well. And what would be great is if we see that women are governed by their femininity, and then when need be, they can be influenced by some of their masculine traits. But what we see today is a complete swap in the polarity. We have majority of men who are governed by their femininity, and we have majority of women who are governed by their masculinity, which is what creates so much contention between the sexes. There's why is there's like a cultural gender war? It's like a sex war. Like men and women, not all, but a good amount are like bitter towards each other. They're angry towards each other. They're resentful. They hold disdain. Why? Because their nature is perverted. They're out of balance. They're out of whack. This is part of why, not all why, part of why. When you look at divorce rates, you had like if you get divorced now, the first time there's 50 to 60% chance you're going to get divorced. Second marriage, you're looking at 70%. Third marriage, you're looking at 80%.
Damn.
90% of those divorces are filed by women. Things are very perverted. And it's not allowing us as men and women to be happy, to love each other like we should, to build families as strong as we could, to raise children as effective as we could, because everything's turned upside down.
Where do you think this stems from? What do you think was like the start of this?
I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this one. I believe that this really started in the 60s with the modern feminist movement, because modern feminist movement said, hey, we have a choice. Mind you, I'm a feminist because I believe women should have a choice. If you want to stay at home or you want to go to work, you should have that choice. 100%. Absolutely. But that's not modern feminism. Modern feminism is saying, hey, let's take the idea of a woman and compete with men by making these women masculine. Let's say that we hate men so much that let's be men. I
think that's a lot of the problem today is that this like girl boss and this I don't need no man, like that type of, I can do it all on my own. I can run a business and support a family and have relationships and be totally fine. I think that is what's driving that, because that is the masculine energy. And so if a female is embodying or being primarily led by the masculine energies, trying to run a business, trying to be the man of the family, by embodying those masculine archetypes, that's a disaster.
Yeah,
They burn out.
That's push that's pushed onto us, not only by these protected groups like the feminists and stuff and the Antifa and all these people and the communists, it's just pushed on us. It's in our education system, right? It's in our media. It's everywhere. It's propagandized to us. So
let's
you're
just
absolutely
get
right.
this out of the way. Men and women are not equal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like we are not equal.
Never will
equal
be.
opportunities. Yeah. Like if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be that CEO, you're passionate about that, absolutely go for it. But it's not like that should not be like success for women. You don't have to do all the things that a man does.
Yes. And here's the thing, because I want to, because when we talk about feminists or modern feminists, it's easy to think that we're attacking women when that's not what we're doing. No. Here's the issue. There's a book called The Way of the Superior Man by David Dita. Every man needs to read that book. It's almost like your Bible. It's understanding your manhood, your masculinity, and how to deal with women. In one of the chapters, he's talking about how women don't say what they want, they say what they feel. And as a man, you have to understand that if you run at your woman's beck and call every time she says something, that's her testing you. And if you just essentially submit to every request that she makes, she's going to know that she can't trust you. Take that principle and apply that to modern feminism. When you have these modern feminists who are crying for this and crying for that and crying for this, and you have weak men,
change it. We just
have weak men who are literally just giving these women whatever they want, because let's be real, it's for sex. They don't support your goals. They don't support your views. These men are trying to manipulate you and have sex with you. They're trying to pretend that they're on your side. They're weak. They cannot control their libido. They have no discipline, no frame. So they say, yes, this is what you want. We're going to give this to you. It's a man's fault. I believe every problem in this world is started from a man. That's what I believe. It's always a weak man that let something slip by. You look at the story of Adam and Eve. Yeah, Eve bit the apple. She bit the fruit, but Adam let the snake in the garden. It's always Adam. That's just my perspective. So what I see is weak men allow those modern feminist voices to be so loud that it gains so much momentum that it's led us to a situation where we're at now, where the narrative today is a very feminist narrative. It's a maternal narrative, right? It's not a patriarchy. We live in a matriarchy today. And you look at the statistics, everything says that. So when we get men to understand their masculinity, understand their power, understand their value, understand that, hey, just because your woman says something doesn't mean you need to do it. Doesn't mean you need to run at her beck and call. It's your decision at the end of the day, because you're the logical brain, generally speaking. You get to make those logical decisions. She's governed by her emotion. So it's up to the men to say, hey, I understand what you're saying. I hear you, but this does not align with our values. So therefore, we're not going to head in this direction.
And this is where the yin yang comes in. What do you think the balance should be between masculine and feminine energy? Is it 60-40?
That's a great question. I think I'm going to say maybe like 75-25. I don't believe.
Well, let's clarify because I think that's too high for everybody. I think maybe for like a CEO or entrepreneurs like we are, I think the 75-25 is good, because you need that to run a business. I think, well, I don't know. Let me hear your thinking on this.
Yeah. Well, now you bring up a good point. Maybe that can't be so generalized as I say. But in our case, I do believe 75-20. I think most of the time we should be operating in our masculinity as men. Now, when we think of our, let's say, average American, maybe, you know what, man, I think I'm still going to go with 75-25. I truly believe that would realign things. I truly believe that would realign, that would essentially heal, that would swap the polarity, and that would heal the union between man and woman. Now, that doesn't mean that, now mind you, this can still be subjective, because not every man can be as masculine as the next. Not every man can be as disciplined or as driven or as ambitious as the next. I believe that each individual, we all have a capacity per se. Like I could never be Michael Jordan. I don't care how much I practiced. I have a certain capacity in that area. So in the same way, I think each man has an individual capacity for their masculine traits.
Yeah, I think 75-25 might be too high, because so I mentioned as a business owner, I believe that you should be driven by impact, led by the divine masculine, influenced by the divine feminine. Mm-hmm. And you're familiar with Gary Vee, obviously. Yep. And his new book that just came out, 12 and a half, it talks about the 12 or 13. That's not all of them, obviously, but some of the most important traits to embody to have a successful business. And most of them are traditionally feminine traits like empathy and kindness and caring. Because as a business owner, if you're not employing those things, you will not succeed, just period. So I guess before we get any further, I want to read off some traits of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Maybe we should have started with this, but so starting off with the divine feminine. So traditional feminine qualities: intuition, creativity, communication, empathy, compassion, acceptance, understanding, living from your heart, kindness, gentleness, and forgiving. And then to the divine masculine: assertiveness, determination, action and goal-oriented, risk-taking, protection, leadership, strength, both mental and physical, logical, providing, and courageous. You say that's a pretty fair explanation?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Is that from his book? Or is that
no? That I got that off of a website talking about divine masculine and feminine.
Yeah. I think that's pretty accurate. I think, of course, some of those can be like empathy, for example. I think you can still show empathy in a masculine way. And I think a man can show empathy in a different way than a woman would, right? I think a man can still show empathy, but still hold you accountable. Whereas a woman can show empathy and give you the nurturing that you need.
Yes.
So that's
I think what I mean by like the 60-40. Like if you think of a yin yang, it's like, it's not like polarizing. It's all fluid. It's moving together. And it's not like one or the other. It's both and. Everything is connected. So if you're a man, you embody mostly masculine energy. That doesn't mean that you can't be empathetic. Right? You've got to be both. If you're not any of the feminine qualities, then we get into the toxic masculinity.
Yeah. Now you're like a narcissist.
Yeah. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about what toxic masculinity actually is and what it's being portrayed as, why it's a problem now.
Yeah. So I think what we've seen in society is people just immediately label masculinity as toxic. Like I've heard this. I've had plenty of conversations. This is anecdotal, but I've had plenty of conversations with people who believe that any form of masculinity, any form of leadership from a man, assertiveness from a man, any expectation, any dominance from a man, confidence is automatically toxic. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. What I believe toxic masculinity is a man who is either completely governed by the masculine or completely governed by the feminine, completely perverted his ways. So if he's completely governed by his masculine, just as we're saying, there's no empathy, there's no understanding. You're not, he's an asshole. Yeah. Yeah. Same. Guilty.
Our first podcast was about ego and how we both
Yeah.
used to be just fucking dicks in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. It takes getting humbled plenty times to align yourself. But yeah, so I think there's obviously that end of the spectrum, or there's the feminine men. And I think the feminine men are the ones who take advantage of women because they can't get what they want, right? Those are the little boys who use and abuse women, and because they're like a child who gets their toy taken away, and now they're physically abusing them, or they're stalking them, or they're embarrassing them online, whatever it may be, right? That's another form of toxic masculinity, but it's very feminine. So what I think toxic masculinity is either you're all masculine and you have no empathy at all, or you're all feminine and you're really just a bitch. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Um,
Just because you're a biological male does not mean that you're a man.
right.
I believe that we need to stop throwing around the term man as like a catch-all. I believe man should like be capitalized. I believe love should start to be capitalized too. These things that there's a bigger meaning behind them. For example, I put out a post on Instagram the other day talking about like being an alpha male versus a beta boy is what I called it. And somebody reached out to me asking what I meant by a beta boy. And I basically said the opposite of all the divine masculine qualities. So if we go back to the qualities, so they're not assertive, they're not determined, like they lack purpose, they're not goal oriented, they don't have any motivation or drive or passion. They overindulge themselves in pleasure. So they're addicted to pornography, masturbation, which is something I want to talk about, or addicted to anything, food, nicotine, alcohol, coffee, whatever it is. I believe that a true man is not addicted to anything, could easily give up his desires and refrain from those desires. Cannot protect either himself or other people. Physically, he's weak. He's not a leader. He can't provide for himself financially or physically, and he lacks courage. So that's what I say is like a beta boy versus an alpha man.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. That is exactly accurate. I think, it's one that really stands out is the indulgence and pleasure, just living. Most men today, or most boys today, they live a very hedonistic lifestyle. It's just consume, consume, consume. It's how much Netflix can I watch? How many video games can I play? How much porn can I watch? It's just, it's an indulgence. It's sin. Really, it's sin. If you look at the 7 deadly sins, it's sloth, it's gluttony. It's a lot of things that are just really damaging your soul, your health, your mindset, your character. And it's hard to dig yourself out of that hole. And I think that's where a lot of men find themselves today.
Before we get into refraining from desires, because this is something I'm very excited about. You mentioned that it harms your character. And I believe obviously that it does, but I believe that also if you harm other people in any way, psychologically, commenting, whatever, I get some of those comments sometimes, and
I'm sure
I don't. I used to let that bother me, or they used to get a reaction out of me, is what they were looking for. And now it's like, I just feel this deep sense of like empathy and compassion because I used to be that person. I used to have those thoughts. I still sometimes occasionally have those thoughts, but I switch it very quickly now because I understand that in order to hurt someone else, you have to be hurting yourself. A true man who has awakened his divine masculinity, who is in proper balance with his divine feminine, there's no harming other people, right? Like you have the ability to protect yourself and to defend yourself and your family against other people if that time arises, but there's no attacking. psychologically or physically. Right.
Yeah.
And so I believe that if you do that, you're harming your character. You're not so much harming the other person, especially because you have to consent to being harmed mentally or physically. Like, you can punch another person, but the other person has to consent to whether or not they suffer from that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that kind of make sense? This is something
absolutely.
that a lot of people don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, what are you talking about? Like these victims of slavery and oppression and all these things. It's like, yes, I understand that those are the physical situations that they're in.
Yeah.
But it's their choice mentally whether or not they suffer from that.
Yeah, I think I agree. Well, that's why the first episode of the podcast was on accountability, and part of that conversation is a victim mindset, understanding that, hey, objectively, you may have been victimized. You may have been abused, hit, whatever, but it's still up to you. You still have free will, and you still have a choice as a man to decide if you're going to be offended or harmed. It's your perspective. And I know for certain that choosing the mindset of I'm a victim doesn't help you. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't. It makes you bitter. It makes you angry. It makes you resentful. And that is opposite of divinity. Divinity is essentially love. So anything pulling away from love, anything operating that's done out of fear is pulling away from your masculinity. It's pulling away from your frame, from your status, from your character. And then, as we're saying, if you choose to then act on it, which is what I've done countless times, it's what led me in the brig, in military prison, in the Marine Corps, acting out of my perceived harm, choosing to harm someone else. And really the harm is done to me. I look like an ass at the end of the day. I embarrass myself. I damage my character. I damage my relationships with other people. It's only me who gets further inflicted, who gets pain further inflicted on himself because I chose to be a victim.
Yeah. And this is like, if you wish someone bad karma, or, you want to get revenge on someone, that's only hurting you.
Yep.
That is only further tarnishing your character.
Yep.
And it's a crazy awakening once you realize that you are the only person who can ever harm yourself, and you get to choose.
Right.
All right. Now let's get into, what do I want to end it with? So I want to get into love and also desire. I think we'll end it on love because I think that's ultimately what's most important. So let's talk about refraining from desire. This is something I've been very excited about recently because I used to be addicted to desires. I had conquered basically all of my desires. I was borderline alcoholic when I was in the Marine Corps. I overcame that. I overcame food addictions because I can fast for long periods of time now. Was never addicted to any substances, like any drugs like nicotine or anything else. I guess video games. I also used to be addicted to video games, just that instant dopamine, and also social media dopamine, just dopamine, playing video games, just dopamine. So I used to be addicted to those as well, along with pornography and masturbation. And it wasn't until I don't know, the past 6 months that those have stopped being addictions, and I can control those desires. It's like you can literally rewire your brain. Especially, I think the pornography one is something that a lot of guys struggle with, and they feel like it's inescapable. Mm-hmm. At least for me, I had tried in the past to quit masturbating, And I guess before we get into that, let's talk about why it's so important to refrain from desires, both psychologically and physically, some of the effects.
Yep. So there's two things really. One is that which you can't fast from controls you. That which controls you then dictates what your life looks like. So your whatever your vice is, that has control of your karma now. You don't, because you give all your attention to this vice. Therefore, it decides what your life looks like. The other thing is that as a man, I believe that our attention is our most valuable resource, our attention. Our attention is what builds families. Our attention is what builds businesses. Our attention is why women spend so much money on makeup and nails, and they take the pictures because it's currency. So if we choose to invest, everything's an investment. So if we choose to invest our attention, our most valuable resource, into something like video games or pornography, we have to think about, just like any other investment, we're asking ourselves, what's my ROI? So if I invest my attention into this video game for 4 hours, what's my ROI? Is it just spikes of dopamine? Maybe some relaxation? Is that it? Was it worth my 4 hours of attention? Well, let's see. What else can I do with 4 hours of attention? Oh man, I can use this time to work or build a business or sell something, create a product, write a book, spend time with my family, right? Spend time with my significant other, take my girl out on a date. I can do a lot of things with that 4 hours with a much grander ROI than just some dopamine hits. So I think it's very important for men to be able to audit their time and understand that you have to take yourself a bit more serious, not too serious to where you can't have fun, but in the environment that we have today, most men are still being children well on into their mid 30s and 40s. They're purposeless. They're purposeless. There's no purpose to their life. There's no purpose to there's nowhere to put their attention that gives them an ROI, which is why they feel depressed, which is why they feel anxious, which is why they feel suicidal, because they're not doing anything with their life. God bless you with life and they're wasting it. Of course you feel depressed. Of course you feel like shit. Of course your self-esteem is low.
Another big one that I deal with on a lot with my clients is focus and productivity and attention span, ADHD. A lot of that stems from this. We can now, in the palm of our hand, go from, we can see any landscape. It's constantly changing.
Yeah.
Whereas back before technology, it was like you're seeing things as they appear, right? You can only see a certain amount of things at a time. And now with social media, it's things you can just scroll by, or like I saw a video breakdown of these new kids like shows, these kids animated shows that parents let their kids watch on YouTube. And the amount of time, what's the best way to describe this? The video only stays on one single frame for a couple seconds maximum before it changes to another angle, and then just like zooms in and zooms out and like constantly changing.
Yeah.
Same thing with scrolling, just new, something else.
Yeah.
And then you wonder why you have attention issues.
Right.
Because in the real world, or when you're working, it's not all these constant new things. You got to focus on one single thing. So if you're hijacking your brain via video games or social media, of course you're going to experience side effects of ADHD. Mm-hmm. Of course you're going to have trouble focusing and being productive. So that's absolutely another part of it, in addition to the depression and a lot of things, loneliness, anxiety.
I agree. Like we're training our mind to not work right. We're training our mind to be broken. And then we blame all these other things, and we go to our doctor and we ask for help, and then they drug us up and medicate
Adderall
us.
and yeah.
When really, and I know you know this, if you would just fast, just try not eating for a day. Try not eating for 2 days. I promise you, a large portion of your anxiety would go away.
Don't try not to eat. Don't eat.
Don't eat. Yeah.
The problem with the diets and working out is, how long have you been trying to lose weight? How long have you been, for me, how long had I been trying to stop watching pornography?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, commit to it. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to touch on some of the physical and neurological benefits of fasting from really anything that produces dopamine. So the social media, the video games, pornography, and pornography goes a little bit deeper when you fast from it, but not just pornography, is ejaculation in general for men specifically. With women, it's different. Women should masturbate and orgasm every single day. So ladies, lucky for you. But for men, it's almost the exact opposite. For men, I'll just talk on what I've experienced now that I've refrained from that. And it's, maybe once a week at most. And now I have tremendously more energy that I can devote to work, workouts, whatever it is, more productive, testosterone increase, mental clarity, and the mental fortitude that transfers into everything else. Because once you can refrain from a certain desire, then every other desire that you have becomes easier to refrain from. And for me, this masturbation was like the final desire that I had to refrain from. I got the fasting down. I work out every single day. I don't play video games hardly ever. It's social media I can control, and then pornography. And then once you can refrain from all these desires, you now have the power to choose whatever it is you want to do. And then you no longer have these issues of attention deficit. And
dude, it's powerful. It's we think of our semen. That is our vitality. That is our essence. That is our livelihood.
It's literally your life force. That
is our creation. We can create life with that. So when you think of men who are, and this was me, beating off every single day, masturbating, wasting my life force, wasting my essence, I wonder why I'm so lethargic. I wonder why I have no motivation. And I wanted to read this. I have this picture here. This passage that I seen someone else post on Instagram, and it was talking about the average male ejaculation. And about 1 tablespoon, the nutritional value of this amount of semen is equal to that of 2 pieces of New York steak, 10 eggs, 6 oranges, and 2 lemons combined. That includes proteins, vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. So imagine that. You're letting all of that go for a momentary pleasure that's gone. That's it. That's what you're using it for. Or you can keep that inside of you and use that energy, that vitality, that vigor to create, to work out, to do something productive, to create the life you want to live. That's how powerful. So I want men to think about that, not only with masturbation, but even with the women you're having sex with. Who are you allowing to have your seed? Who are you allowing to pull the seed out of you and use it? Are they worth it? Are they worth, go back and listen to what I just listed. Are they worth the 2 steaks and the eggs and the oranges? Think about that. I had to think about that because I'm in a relationship now. And what I'm working on now is still refraining from ejaculating. So having sex, but trying to hold out as long as I can. It's very difficult. It's the most difficult thing I've done.
But doesn't it feel fucking amazing when you do?
Invigorated.
It's like the most powerful feeling. Even when you're in a committed relationship or married,
Yep.
you should still refrain from ejaculating.
Yep.
I believe, once a week is a good point for most people who are listening to this podcast. I believe if you can get to once a week, that's a good start, especially if you're having sex with a significant other. Because I talked to a client about this the other day. That has so many positive benefits, from improving your erections for sex in the future, for improving sexual performance overall, for lasting longer, for being able to control the whole entire situation. Because so many guys struggle with whatever it is, erectile dysfunction, or premature ejaculation, or not being able to ejaculate, whatever the problem is. If you can train yourself to be able to control that, this one of the things that's the most difficult thing to control, right? The first few times it's hard. Like, you're like, fuck, reason. But if you just focus on your breathing, and it's a powerful feeling.
Yeah. And it's just like with social media, refraining for it, just you train yourself to just be in the moment and not have to need this end result, which is very essentially it's hedonistic. It's like, I want the gratification, I want the pleasure, that's all, rather than enjoying the time with your significant other. And
going into it with an expectation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think really that mindset there, going into it with an expectation, is where a lot of the premature ejaculation and the erectile dysfunction comes from. A lot of it is just mental. So if you have the space with your partner to communicate that and work through that together, it can get better. It takes practice. And then end result too, is just as you mentioned earlier, if you can get to a point where you can control yourself, with the strongest urge we have is to procreate.
Yep.
That and eating, I'd say. So if you can deprive yourself of those two things, there's nothing you can't do. There's nothing you can't do.
I promise you guys, once you try this, maybe start with fasting. That's a little bit easier, because I believe like the sexual drive, especially in men filled with testosterone, that can be difficult to control. So maybe start with fasting from food for 16 to 24 hours, work your way up there. Start fasting from social media, only use your phone for an hour a day, something like that. And then once you become more sensitized to refraining from those desires, then work into this refraining from ejaculation thing. But once you feel like you're unstoppable, because you are. Nobody can stop you but you. Right. You become more energized throughout your day, more productive. It's incredible. So I know we're coming up on time here. Let's talk about love and the power of love and acting through love. I remember we had one of our conversations on Instagram was about this. So let's talk about capital L, love.
Yeah. I'm reading a book right now called A Course in Miracles by Helen Schumer, I want to say. And it's all about moving more towards divinity, moving more towards God, insert whatever word you want to use there. And she's saying that love is truth. Anything else is not true. Anything else is done out of fear. If it's done out of fear, it's not true. It's just our ego that's creating it. If we're operating out of the ego, then we're not operating from God. We're not operating from the divine energy. They're separate. And you can either choose to operate out of divine or operating out of the ego. We have that choice. So moving more towards the divine and moving with love, this was something it was a huge revelation for me, because of my experiences, because of my childhood, because of trauma, I was always a very angry, hateful person, very vengeful person, very toxic, so much pent up pain and aggression. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, hurt people. So that's what my life consisted of now. And so trying to tell me 5 years ago or 6 years ago, um, hey man, you should just love people with no expectation. Just love them. Just love everyone. That person did you wrong. Tell them you love them. Just tell them. I'm like, dude, you're fucking crazy. Like, there's no fucking way. But
Yeah.
it took me healing to realize, wow, that really is what I'm being called to do. Being called to just love people. And it's not like the intimate relational love, right? It's love of really when you love yourself, you have no choice but to love others. Because when you give yourself grace, when you forgive yourself for your mistakes, when you understand that you are doing your best and you're committed to growth, it's easy to see that in others. So therefore you can't be upset with them for harming you or doing you wrong, because you understand that they're doing the best they can with what they've been giving. And understanding that if you choose to love them, you can help them, you can assist them, and you can give them the spark, the light that can change their perspective in life. Maybe they're having a bad day, and maybe your compliment, or maybe you're helping them, maybe you're helping a lady with their groceries. Maybe that changes their whole perspective for that day. You don't know, like think about how many people we come in contact with on a daily basis. How do we know that one of those individuals wasn't planning to kill themselves that day? Right? We're veterans. 22 veterans kill themselves a day. So you never know what conversation you're going to have with somebody and where they're at in that point of life. And in that point, they could be on the verge of killing themselves, and you just showing them some love, just appreciating them, being grateful for them as a person, that can be the thing that saves them. And it's very simple. It's not easy, but it's very simple. Right? I think it's there's another book called for the listeners, Power versus Force by David Hawkins, I want to say. It pretty much, he scales life on a level of consciousness, and at the top, love is very high. And that'll help a lot of people unravel their thoughts on how to let go of what's holding them back from loving and just embrace it. Very good resource.
You also never have any idea why somebody is doing or saying the things that they're doing or saying. You have no idea what's going through their head, how they were raised. They might believe that is the exact right thing that they need to be doing. And so instead of coming at it from a place of judgment, empathize with them. See yourself as them. If you were raised with the same conditions, under the same circumstances, in the same position they're in right now, you would probably be doing the exact same thing. Right. And this was, again, mind blowing for me. I think that conversation we had in the Instagram DMs was so funny. Like, you're like, yeah, imagine telling the section back then we all need to love each other. Because like at the time, like until you realize these things on your own, nobody can tell them to you. If anybody would have told me these things that we're talking about now, I would have said, fuck off. Like, I don't care. You're wrong. I'm right. My ego is right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot more places that we could go, but we're coming up on the time. And I think we're going to have to do another one of these sometime in the future. But until then, tell people where they can find more about you, Karma Conscious, all the good stuff.
Yeah. On Instagram, Karma Conscious 8. If you look us up on Twitter, it's Karma Conscious, but it's conscious with a K. So Karma, and then conscious with a K. YouTube, same thing. Karma Conscious.
I think some people might not know how to spell conscious.
Yeah. KONSCIOUS.
Yeah.
Almost threw me for a loop there too. But and then my personal Instagram is man of men _.
Love that. Anything you want to leave the listeners with? One, let's say like the major key takeaway you'd like them to implement?
I'd say, I think a message for men is that we need to understand that we are the leaders of this world. And if we want things to change, it's up to us. And we need to take accountability for our own lives, our families, our societies, because I truly believe that if you heal the union between man and woman, then you heal our families. If you heal our families, you heal our neighborhoods, and then you heal our communities, then our cities and our states, countries. But it all starts with man and woman. And if we are the leaders, then men, it's up to you. So get to work and find answers. They're out there because we found them.
Boom. We'll leave it at that. All right. Thank you to everybody listening. Until next time, don't forget, live the captain's lifestyle.